Alright guys, welcome to this video today. In this one I'm going to be talking about how to increase fluidity and flow within your striking combos. So many people watch athletes online move in, somebody with really nice and aesthetic technique, very fluid and flowy, and they might wish to be able to move that way. However, when it comes to training themselves, they just sort of can't replicate it, and it's quite frustrating for them. And what that person's doing is there's some very subtle movement patterns or slight tweaks they're making to their technique to make the movements look that way. And so in this video, I'm going to aim to highlight some of those things for you so that you can incorporate them into your training and improve your striking combos as a result. Now, I think the reason that this stuff often kind of goes very unnoticed is because even instructors, people who are sort of like bringing up the next generation of martial artists, don't really even know this stuff themselves. There are some really great instructors, but many of them just don't really understand this kind of stuff. They might even be able to actually perform the techniques themselves, but then being able to kind of like explain to somebody who's not at that level and break it down is a really different level of understanding and requires a different skill set. Now, this stuff that we're going to be talking about in this video is a little bit more advanced, and so if you're at a super beginner level where you're just getting to grips with the basic techniques, then this isn't really going to be applicable for you. But if you've been training even just a few months and you're kind of familiar with those basics, you should start training this stuff, I think, straight away, because the sooner you start to get to grips with this stuff, because it does require quite a good degree of body control and awareness, then the sooner you're going to be able to improve your striking as a result. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the basic concept that I'm going to be speaking about, and then I'm going to give a few demos of some combos of where I'm actually applying this to demonstrate. Now, on the surface, a combination might seem simple. It might just be, say, a jab, cross, hook or something like that. However, there are infinite ways of executing that combo depending on the angle, the starting position, where you position your body and things like that, your footwork, all of this type of stuff. And this is why it's very important to utilize different methods within your training regime, because if you just stick to one, then you're going to get too familiar with that and stagnate, and then as soon as that stimulus switches up, you're going to be really struggling and you're not going to know what to do. So this is why, for instance, shadow boxing is very different to pads, which is very different to hitting a bag, which is very different to sparring, and so on. All of these things are very different, although they do use obviously the same set of techniques, basic techniques and movements. So we need to be able to adapt to different ones, and what we're going to be talking about today is prioritizing the shot in your combination and how that affects your movement. So what I'm going to show you now is a few variations of different combos and how I would change it up depending on the scenario and how I wish to prioritize those shots. And you've probably seen me speak about this concept with kicking techniques before, and I always say about doing all of the work of the technique as soon as you can, so that all you have to do at the end is like extend the technique. And if I'm having to drag myself through this big wide range of movement before I kick, it's going to be slow. However, if I'm able to shift my body very quickly from this position into this position, then all I have to do is snap that kick out at the end. So it's accelerating yourself through the movement early, so then the technique happens much quicker, and as a result it's going to be much harder to read from your opponent as well. So the first one I'm going to be showing you today is a version of just the basic jab cross, the 1-2. And obviously when we learn this to start with, we just go 1, 2, and this is always the way I teach it, from here 1, 2, and then retracting back to guard, okay, down those nice clean lines. But now I'm going to be talking about a different way of doing it that I like to sometimes utilize, and when it's done at speed you can hardly tell the difference, but just kind of keeping this in mind, and a lot of the things I do when I train that are all kind of little mindful things that I'm doing that make all the difference. And the difference with this one is, instead of doing this basic jab cross where I almost sort of throw the shot from here as I twist my body through and replace those shoulders, so to here, what I do instead is I emphasize putting my shoulder forward first like this, and then it's almost as if the cross becomes like a jab. And the reason you do that, it's going to lose a bit of power. It's never going to be as powerful as coming from back here, but it's much less telegraphed and it's much quicker. And I've seen Mayweather do this a lot in his sparring videos as well, that you can find on YouTube, where he's at his gym. He will hit people and it almost looks like his cross comes forward like a jab and hits like this. So from here, 1, and it's like pushing the shoulder forward first, then it comes out like a jab. It's still a cross, of course, but it comes in. So if I show you the two different variations a little bit faster, hopefully that will make a bit more sense. So if I do the basic one first, I'll do two versions of each one. Okay, so the first one, 1, 2, that's the basic, 1, 2. Then if I do the variation now, okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, and I pull it in. If I do it from this way, you should be able to see the difference, okay? 1, 2, that's the basic, 1, 2, and then this is the changed version, 1, 2, 1, 2, like this, okay? I feel that it's much less telegraphed because the shoulder comes forward first and you're not seeing this part here. And our eyes really struggle to see things coming directly towards us. They're much better at seeing from the sides, so that's why this works. Now, sticking to that same combination, I'm just going to show you a different variation of it as well. So obviously we've had this one where we push the shoulder forward and we've had the basic one, but now in terms of, say, this probably applies more to longer combos as we're going to get into, but you can also have a shorter cross, okay? And when I say a shorter cross, the thing that beginners tend to do is they'll get like this and they won't turn their shoulders at all. That's not what I'm talking about. So in my same stance here, if I'm then going to be adding another shot after the jab cross, it doesn't make sense for me to be so far through like this, because then I've got to drag my body all the way back through, okay? So if I was doing a shorter jab cross in the same way, 1, 2, like this, okay? Can you see how I'm still rotating through with that shoulder, but I'm not pushing it all the way forwards? And if I was prioritizing power in that last shot, I'd want to get everything into this last shot, sorry. So one bang through with that last shot. However, if I'm going to be throwing something after, say like a hook, it makes more sense for me not to extend too much on this, because then I'm going to have to do more work to get the hook out. So the way that would look would be like this, okay? So instead of the 1, 2, that's the long one where you'd finish on the cross. This one is into, say, a hook, so I'd go like this, 1, 2, 3, like this, 1, 2, 3. I'm still replacing the shoulders through, but I'm just not going like this. This would be the difference if I put power into all of them. 1, 2, 3. And you see how it's like 1, 2. It's laboured and slow. So I'm almost taking a little bit out of the second shot in order to get that last one executed nice and fluidly and quickly. And this is something that you can take into your training when you're practicing on bag as well, because it's nice and solid. It's a good target to hit against because it's not going to move, and you can really practice those different ranges and putting power into each individual shot. Now the next one I'm going to cover is a 3-hit combo, and I think this one will be able to illustrate the point a little easier for you. So this combo is going to be a jab, uppercut, lead hook, okay? So in order to, if I was to just do the combo straight and put obviously that power into each shot, it would look like this. I'd jab, turn my body through for the uppercut, and then I'd retract this back and bring the hook through from here. Now that's all good, but it's a little bit slow. Whenever we're striking something, a lot of the strikes that we do in a combo obviously are not supposed to be knockout shots. They're to kind of set up the last shot. So say for instance here, if my hook is the prioritized shot, the way I would do this instead of kind of turning through on each one, is I would stay more side on, I'd jab out as normal, then instead of really turning my body through on the uppercut like this, I would keep my shoulder back a little bit and I'd still throw it. So I'd go 1, 2, like this, maybe a little bit more than that, 1, 2 to here, then I'd bring the hook through from there, because in this position, rather than this position, obviously for like a really turn through powerful uppercut, I'm in a much better place to set up a nice fast hook, bang, from there, yeah? Because if I'm here, then as I draw this one right through, for the opponent in front of me, from here, 1, if I bring that big uppercut through, as I bring that hook through, you can see it straight away. However, if I'm from here, and if I stay here with it and don't turn my shoulder through as much, so jab, uppercut, then as I turn through for that hook, it's much quicker and it comes from a much more sort of hidden place, and you don't see it until it's too late. A lot of guys in Muay Thai tend to throw every shot really hard. There's nothing wrong with that at all, but this stuff is more kind of like subtle boxing stuff in order to throw faster combos. So I think it's good to be able to do both, obviously. If you can do the basic power shots, adding this sort of like these subtle changes onto your movements is kind of a more advanced step, so train both. So the first one would be like this. If I was putting power into all of them and really turning through, 1, 2, 3, like this, yeah? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3. Now if I change to that other version and stay a little bit more side on, it also feels way more comfortable as well to do the combo. So from here, 1, 2, 3, yeah, in, 1, 2, 3. It's much tighter from there, yeah? Now the last boxing example I'm going to show is we're going to be moving from our stance here. I'm going to slip a shot and I'm going to throw a screw shot upwards to the jaw. So you might have seen me doing this in that boxing training video that I uploaded last week. The way I like to do this is, if I'm just doing this shot and this is the only one I'm doing, I'm going to put my whole body into it and watch how much I turn. So if I slip from that shot, if I'm stepping off the line in center of me here, I turn over, and then as I come back, this jab is going to be very powerful. It's still technically a jab, but it's almost becomes a cross, because can you see how my right shoulder, which is my crossing hand's actually in front here, then as I kind of like recoil back, I'll turn my whole body out like this. I'm really exaggerating this here, and sort of hitting upwards, and my foot's turning out here as well. That's when that's got a lot of nice power, okay? So if I step off, bang, and then retract in, okay? Now if I was throwing a cross on the end of that, it wouldn't make sense to turn that much. If I'm prioritizing the cross here, if I turn out like this, massively like this, then I've got to do way more to get that cross into the target, okay? Whereas if I just slip here, the way I would do this from this position here is I'd hit out to here, but I'm not going fully out like this, okay? I'm shortening it a little bit because then my cross hand has still got a nice short distance to travel. As soon as you take it too far back, I've got to bring it all the way from back here right forwards, okay? And this is those subtle little changes. So instead of that, I would go like this, 1, 2, instead of going right out like this, okay? If I was doing it just one, I'd go like this, slip, bang, and I'd hit in, okay? Whereas if I'm doing the 1, 2, I'd step, slip, hit. I'll slip off. The one if I'm just prioritizing the jab, retract back and hit in, or the screw shot, sorry, upwards and back in. Whereas if I'm prioritizing the cross on the end, slip, I'll hit here. So it's the same shot exactly, just not as much into it. And then I'll hit through with that cross as well. So 1, 2, like that, as opposed to one big one, okay? Slip, hit, hit, and over. Now lastly, we're going to focus on some kicking techniques, and like I said, this is exactly the same principle throughout all of these different things. It's the same with the boxing and the same with the kicking. Shifting my body nice and quickly into the optimal position so that all I have to do is extend the kick, and it's already almost like the kick, 90% of the kick has taken place before it even extends. If I was to do the kick how a lot of people do this, is they will do everything all throughout the whole movement, so it'll be quite slow and you'll also see it a lot out of this way. So it'll come up like this, okay? And it's quite laboured, it feels slow for me and it feels awkward, it feels quite sluggish. Whereas if I extend quickly forwards like this, you see how it's like it comes right down the middle and then hits through, rather than coming wide from the outside, and then I don't really have any control of it afterwards either. As opposed to shifting that body here into this position, you see how like all I do is just extend the kick at the end, and this happens through the pivoting of the foot. Now this is the same principle, say, if I want to deliver a low kick as well, because again, the bare bones technique of a kick is to pivot on this standing foot so that your hips get into the correct alignment and then you extend the kick. However, you don't always want to do that. Say for instance, if you're throwing a leg kick, you don't want to turn right through every time on a leg kick like this, because it's just going to leave you in a suboptimal position afterwards. So for this, I would change this and I would do a leg kick and almost keep my body in this position, which requires a bit of a degree of mobility and flexibility. But from here, I would turn through and I'd hit like this and then come back, okay? So the difference is this. So if I want to put loads of power in, I can turn right through, obviously if I can see an opening. But if I want to just tap the opponent and kind of, you know, wear them down over time, I'll move here and I'll bring it in like this. Can you see how almost like I rotate my body through this way, and I don't need to pivot as much, especially because it's low. And as you get higher, you do need to pivot more in order to get that kick up. Otherwise, it's going to start becoming like one of those half front kick, half turning kick things. So depending on which level you're at, okay, different versions of it. So if I'm kicking low and I want to rotate through to put more power in, I will rotate right through on that standing foot. However, if I want to just wear the opponent down like this as I'm moving, I'll just tap in like this and I won't rotate quite as much, and it allows me to get back into position easily as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video today, guys. I've just shown you a few different combos and ways to subtly change them. And the way you would actually work on this in your sessions is by forcing yourself into different stimulus. Like I said, you know, using different methods, shadow boxing, pads, bag, sparring, all different things you can do. And you want to sort of change the ranges of different things. Obviously, like if you're wishing to work on, say, that shorter cross, for instance, stand a little bit closer to your target. Don't always stay in the same range. Make sure you're moving around and make those angles awkward for yourself so that you have to change the way that you hit, and so you're still able to apply power in those techniques. As this video plays out, I'm going to show a short montage of a few different combinations and different variations that I'm doing in them to subtly change them, just as we've spoken about in this video. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video.